Greetings, one and all, to the most cursed, most cringiest corner of the internet. A YouTube channel content creator actively alienating everyone in both the analog and digital world. Well, welcome and good evening, wonderful dice of all alignments. I am Lunar D8, and I'm wanting to do something where I go through the Bible and just sort of keep track of every time somebody dies or something bad happens to them throughout the entire Bible. Now, of course, there might be other things to be on the lookout for while reading through the Bible. If you have any suggestions, let me know in the comments. Now, that being said, I've said a few times, while I am a very strong believer in God and in Jesus Christ, I do have some varying opinions on a few things. But at the same time, everyone has a right to believe what they want. And everyone should just study for themselves. I'm sure many things I have, people will have a difference of opinion on me. And that's fine. I'm open to discussions. That being said, main differences with me is I don't find the idea of hell or torture justifiable. I would prefer a world where we didn't have war. And I see no sin in people being gay or bisexual or anything like that. But basically, the main point of these series of videos will be just going through the Bible and keeping track of every time somebody dies, or gets hurt, or something bad happens. And pretty much what I'll be doing is going through a little bulleted point list of stuff I've written. Done Judges chapter 1. We'll start with Judges, just because talked about Samson a bit in the past, so I think it would be the most interesting part to start. I tried at one point to read a bit of Psalms or Proverbs, but I got very, very distracted. I will try not to do that. That being said, I'm just a random crazy person, so this whole thing is, I guess, not much different than the rest of my channel. Just practically schizo posting. So, if you don't mind listening to a crazy person talk about the Bible, then that's fine. But yeah, also I probably should just type things in the future because my handwriting looks terrible. So I might not be able to read my own handwriting here in a bit. But pretty much what I'll do is I'll read through the bulleted point list. And also I'm thinking that at the end of each chapter, there's a website called 929 Chapters that gives like a brief couple sentence long summary of each chapter for every book of the Bible. I think like when I get done with Judges, I could just make a video where I just read through that. Now that being said, each of these videos I'll probably just cover one chapter, but maybe a couple more if it's very short chapters. That being said, for now, like Judges 1 is a long enough chapter, so I'll read through the bulletin point lists I make, and then I'll read through the chapter itself. Aside from that, again, like I say, is I believe in God. I believe in Jesus Christ. That being said, I don't think anybody should be punished in this life or the next for who they do or do not believe in. So, if somebody out there is an atheist, I don't think they should go to hell. And I don't think that person should be, treated any differently. I mean, as long as your religion isn't calling, for hurting me or hurting someone I care about or to do something really bad, then, and even then, most religions have like so many denominations. I mean, the Jewish faith has split multiple times, both in terms of teachings as well as ethnicity, just because, a group of people spread out among the world, and you can't have a large group of people spread out for thousands of years and very far distances surrounded by different cultures without expecting some sort of change. I mean, I think the main difference, I think it's like Ashkenazi Jews are the ones mainly stayed more in Europe and Asia, and Sephardic were more in the northern Africa and places like Italy and Spain and Portugal and maybe not Italy. I'm not sure. I can't. Everyone's like, can't you remember anything? No, apparently not. Which is kind of funny. Like, I remember one point I was 13, I could actually just like read through like a couple pages of information and spend 20 minutes reading through over and over, and I could actually recite it all from memory. I can't do that anymore. Then again, I remember I graduated high school with honors diploma. I had 4.0, did calculus, chemistry, and physics. I remember none of that. I want to learn how to speak German. That's a very slow process. I took 3 years of Spanish in high school. I don't remember any of that. I want to learn German. I want to learn Japanese. I want to learn French. I want to learn Hebrew. But Hebrew is kind of a complicated thing because there's multiple forms of it. You have Yiddish, which is more of a German dialect, I think. And then, of course, you have the Greek Hebrew and then the original form Hebrew. And so the language went through a few changes. So I'm not even sure which one is considered the most commonly used. And again, it probably just depends on what region of the world you're in. Then, of course, you have Christians. I mean, you had, a large period of time since the Roman Empire split into the Roman and Byzantine Empire. And, of course, each of them gradually over time changed a bit. Then, of course, there was I believe, Orthodox Church that was in a church in Russia that I can't remember. Everyone's like, you should research this before making a video. I'm like, no, I'm just going to go off memory. If I'm wrong, you guys can correct me. And if I am missing a detail like the name of that church, I mean, I could go look it up on Google right now on my phone. Hold on. Everyone's like, where are you going, Lunar? So I'm walking over to my phone. It's like, why don't you search it on the computer? Because that would affect the screen capture. Picture of Samson. Like I said, I thought it'd be the most interesting way to start with this disorganized mess. Sound of me typing. Let's see. Which country first accepted the Orthodox Christianity? The Armenian Apostolic Church, Oriental Orthodox Christian Church, National Church Armenia. According to tradition, Armenia was evangelized by the Apostle Bartholomew. And Thaddeus, Armenia, became the first country to adopt Christianity at about 300 AD. I'm wanting the name of the church. I know it says here Eastern Orthodoxy first emerged in Russia during the late 10th century when Grand Prince Vladimir I of Kiev adopted Christianity in 988. Okay, let me put this down so I can type again. Everyone's like, you should have researched this first. Just end the video and restart this. I'm like, no. Okay. Could be wrong, but because I don't have a picture pulled up, but let me type to images real quick, see if it's not quite what I remember out of my memory. I don't remember the building. I'm thinking about having golden tops maybe that's the case. It's just not what I remember in my memory. And everyone's like, your memory's unreliable. I'm looking at some of these pictures on the inside of the church. It looks very beautiful. That's one thing. I've always thought a lot of the old Catholic and Orthodox cathedrals of the past. Everyone's like, we can't hear you silently looking at architecture. I'm just saying it's messing to what? It's I can't think of the word. I know it's an M word. I'm drawing a blank. For whatever reason, that I can't think of it. There's an M word for saying the word saying something. And I can't, not messaging, not managing, not like, it's, I am drawing a complete blank and I want to try to remember that and I can't. But it's saying here St. Basil's Cathedral is Moscow's most famous artistic work of architecture, also called the Pokrovsky Cathedral, Cathedral of Intercession of the Virgin by the Moat, is the most recognizable Russian building. I'll just type in St. Basil's Cathedral. Everyone's like, you're failing to stay focused, Lunar. I'm like, I know. Just let me look at this church real quick. I don't know if this is the correct building, but it looks more like that thing I have a vague memory of, and because I watched a lot of documentaries in the past, and oh, there's a lot of pictures on the inside too. Yeah, like I said, whether it's Orthodox or the old Catholic churches, it's, I don't know, I really like architecture. Like, I'm not a Catholic, but I find the churches look really cool. And it's amazing that people like built buildings that incredible and that large. And I mean, the architecture not only looks beautiful, but the fact that they built that stuff, such a very long time ago, the one that they could build it with the limited technology they had, but also the fact that the buildings have lasted. Heck, maybe one day I'll actually visit the Notre Dame Cathedral in France. Eventually I might want to try to learn French. I've tried to sing a couple songs in French. Anytime I try to sing any song in any other language, I'm just butchering the language. Trying to learn German, it's a very slow process. Everyone's like, it's been 12 minutes, you've done nothing. I got distracted, okay? Main point is this. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. I believe in the Holy Ghost. But I disagree with quite a few things in the Bible. Like, don't be wrong. I consider the Bible the accurate world history, that everything written in the Bible actually happened. But keep in mind, there's several different versions of the Bible. There's a Catholic Bible that has more, a Greek version, an Orthodox, as well as a very long history of that stuff that honestly I think you guys are better off researching on your own. The best way to put it is this. The Bible is not a book of morals. It is a history book. All the things written happened. Granted, some details are omitted, but the laws are not really based on right or wrong. It's an edict to ensure survival and success of a tribal society, especially without antibiotics or any kind of modern medicine. I mean, to basically make sure to ensure survival at all costs. It's not about ethics. It's about efficiency. And it is very good. A lot of the laws, the way things are set up in the old times, it definitely works to make a nation more powerful and make it function better. But a lot of them, I disagree with the morality on it. But of course, I'm the kind of person I feel like all philosophical questions should be on the table to be asked. That when it comes to philosophy, there's nothing that should be off limits. And while I think it would be a bad idea to ever, for anyone to ever be disrespectful of God or of Jesus, I think people should be able to openly ask questions and try to understand things a bit better. Not with any sort of malicious intent, but with just the desire to understand things better. Though I'm probably doing a terrible job of being of any help to anybody because I am just rambling incoherently and can't really focus on even the subject at hand. Main point being is I believe in the Bible, I believe in God, but I disagree with several things in the Bible, and that is a very long, complicated discussion. But the main point of this playlist is mainly going to be going through how many times and how many people die or get hurt. We're starting with Judges, and then, though I don't know if I should read book, like if there's a chapter where no one dies, I don't know if you guys would want me to still read that or not. I'm not sure where we're going with this. I just think it's important for people to read the Bible, whether you're, heck, even if you're not a Christian. I think you should read the Bible. And everyone's like, well, if you're not shouldn't you read other things? I'm like, I try to read everything I can. But then a lot of times I read like Warhammer books and light novels and manga and anime. Heck, I was walking on a bike trail and I was having a make-believe conversation with myself, just sort of going over basic geometry about how, like, the Pythagorean theorem stuff works and how angles work and how I would explain it to somebody in medieval times. Everyone's like, you sound so boring. I'm like, yeah, I know. It's just like when Lunar spent hours walking on a bike trail talking to himself about math. But, yeah, this is a very disorganized thing. But like I said, I might be, like, in between each book, I could read that thing by that site called 929 Chapters, where they just give a brief summary of things. So I guess I could just, like, read through all of that, then go back through and just give any 2 cents I have. And like I said, any opinions anyone out there has are welcome. I mean, as long as you're not, like, saying, like, racial slurs or threatening people or wishing any sort of violence on anyone, it's fine. But that being said, I mean, as long as you're polite, all conversation is welcome. But, yeah, the Book of Judges. Joshua dies of old age at 110 years old. So, one death, but that's death of old age. Then, yep, I really do need to write or type stuff. Or write neater. And it mentions that there was a large group of Perizzites and Canaanites, as there is a lot of war and pillaging and conquering going on in this chapter. Judges chapter 1, of course, verse 4, in the city of Bezek, 10,000 people are listed as dead. Then there was an Adonibezek, who was the king of that place, who had his thumbs and his big toes on both hands and feet cut off, and then he was taken to Jerusalem. That being said, it is mentioned that he died in Jerusalem, so I assume he died of gangrene. That being said, he did mention, after having his thumbs and his big toes cut off, that he had done the same thing to 70 or 72 other people, depending on, translations. Also, there's a lot of mentioning that a lot of the old Canaan tribes were doing a lot of infighting with each other, so that made it a bit easier for the Israelites back then to win. Next, we have stuff that I have failed to write in a way that I can read. Can't even read my own fucking handwriting. Should. Okay. Right, and the children of Judah fought against Jerusalem, when it was still occupied by other people, taken it and smitten it with the edge of the sword, and then set the city on fire. So what did I write here? I can't read that. All right. I wrote Jerusalem first taken. I need to write much neater. Been nice if honestly, it probably would work better if I had actually written it sitting at a table rather than just scribbling on a book sitting on my bed while listening to Tool albums and playing Doki Doki Literature Club Plus. Everyone's like, this is not professional. Like, I know. Anyway, then we have like a bunch of people in the mountain and people in a valley, or though it mentions several mountains and valleys. There's some peoples in a mountain valley that are killed, others that are driven away, others that they can't stop, especially chariots of iron. Then there was a Debir city that, they killed everyone there. Then there was a Hebron city that was destroyed. And then there was, I believe, the three sons of Adonabezek, Shishai, Aharan, and Talmai, because I can't pronounce anything. So those are more deaths. Then Kirjathsepher city taken by Othniel to get the daughter of Caleb to marry, because Caleb promised that, hey, whoever takes this city gets my daughter to be married. And Othniel, like, yeah, I'll do it. And he succeeded. Then they slew the city of Zaphath, which again, I was looking around trying to find, like, okay, how many people lived in Zaphath? The answer is, I don't know, and I couldn't find anything about it. But I came across the 929 chapter website there, so, like I said, we'll incorporate that. And then it mentions that they took the cities of Gaza, Ashkelon, and Ekron. And keep in mind, by taking, I mean full-on war, sieging of a city, pillaging, conquering, all-around murder. And it doesn't mention if people are being, genocided or raped or enslaved in those situations. But there's other chapters in the Bible where it kind of goes into more detail on that. And, I mean, let's be honest, just common sense. Most of history fucking sucked. And there was a lot of war. And let's be honest, a lot of people who are pillaging a city in the past weren't exactly caring about morals or ethics. Like I said, it's about efficiency. It's about power. It's about dominance. It's about, growing your nation. And, like, obviously there are some situations in which war is justified. Usually if it's a issue of defense or necessity. And, well, I can't say I really know the circumstances back then. And I don't really know a lot of, like I said before, there's a lot of small details that are omitted. So I really don't know what the fuck was going on. But like, take the Adonabezek dude. I mean, he literally said that he had, whether it was 70 or 72, that he had done the same thing about cutting off other kings' thumbs and, big toes and stuff. So it's not like it was a bunch of innocent people all fighting each other. It was like a large group of people that were all killing each other and not being very gentle. It's kind of like slavery existed like from the very early starts of mankind, and it's just like, you think that would be one of the first things that should have been made illegal. So, that being said, I really don't know the situations and circumstances of a lot of people, and a lot of people probably in war probably weren't there by their choice. So it was either do what you're told or die. Heck, I mean, in most situations, especially medieval times, which is about 2,000 plus years after, well, actually almost 3,000 years after the events of this story. Well, actually 4,000 actually, because, no, 3,000. It's after Moses. But, yeah. I mean, the events of this story like 4,000 years ago, and everyone's like, where are we going with this? I don't remember. I spaced out. But I'm just saying, like, even as 1,000 years ago, people went to war, nations conscripted people against their will to fight, which is fucked up. But I mean, heck, even like 50 years ago, we had like a draft where people were being forced to fight against their will. And it's just, like, I think it's ideal if a country has voluntary military service, but I'm against any sort of draft. And I would say at least if a country is to draft people, it should at least pay well. You should at least be rewarded for the task that you don't have a choice in. But in general, I don't know. I'm just saying I would prefer that there be no war or anyone killing anyone anywhere. But that's very unrealistic. But yeah, the main point I'm just trying to say is, like, in the past, a lot of times, say medieval times, like 800 years ago, if like your king told you to go to the military service, you'd either be outright executed or you'd like go to a torture chamber. Where it's like, oh, especially like if you like defected from your military or tried to run away. It's like, well, guess what? Now you're being hung off of a various rusty metal thing full of spikes. So, but even then, even 50 years ago, there were still drafts in just about most countries, and there's still some countries right now that are requiring drafts. And it's just, I don't know, I don't think people should be forced to go into service against their will. Like, if it's an important enough cause, there should be people that want to go do it. But, yeah, I'm just, like I said, I'm pro-military. I'm pro-Second Amendment. But I'm anti-war. And I would rather we just not have any wars at all. And that nobody hurt anyone. But that's not how that works. But anyway, then also they conquered the city of Luz. But on the way there, they saw a man, asked him for directions on how to invade the city and where the door was and all that. And said, hey, you let me know, we'll spare you and your family. And he did, and they spared him. And then they basically ransacked that entire city and renamed it Bethlehem. However, the man they spared, him and his family went off and built their own little city next to some other group of people. And they named that new city Luz. And then also all the surviving Canaanites who were able to live independently were tributed. Basically, they had really, really high taxes cast on them. So again, that's also kind of fucked up and wrong. But again, I don't know the circumstances back then, and it's not like those people were innocent either. I'm just saying, I'm missing a lot of details. I am definitely missing a lot of details, and there's definitely stuff I don't understand about that. But I can't say it sits right with me. Like I said, I feel like there should be some sort of peaceful solution. But again, I understand, there's a lot of stuff I don't know about. And especially back then, there was probably a lot more going on that perhaps led to some sort of justification for it. And while I'm sure it's there, it's just not written here. So I'm just saying I would have liked more details. But then I'm the kind of person who asks, what kind of childhood did Noah and Abraham have growing up? And what did their parents teach them? Like, what did Noah's parents teach him when he was a child? What exactly did they know about, just about anything? I don't know. I think it's interesting just to go through old science books and math books and history books. I don't know. Anyway, I guess I'll read this now. Judges, the book of Judges, chapter 1. Now after the death of Joshua, it came to pass that the children of Israel asked the Lord, saying, who shall go up for us against the Canaanites first, to fight against them? And the Lord said, Judah shall go up. Behold, I have delivered the land into his hand. And Judah said unto Simeon his brother, come up with me into my lot, that we may fight against the Canaanites, and I likewise will go with thee into thy lot. So Simeon went with him. And Judah went up, and the Lord delivered the Canaanites and the Perizzites into the hand. And they slew of them in Bezek 10,000 men. And they found Adonibezek in Bezek, and they fought against him, and they slew the Canaanites and the Perizzites. And Adonibezek fled, and they pursued after him and caught him, and cut off his thumbs and his great toes. And Adonibezek said, 70 kings, having their thumbs and their great toes cut off, gather their meat under my table. As I have done, so God hath requited me. And they brought him to Jerusalem, and there he died. So maybe he lived for a while longer. So, yeah, I mean, maybe he didn't, and there he died. So, I don't think he died of gangrene. I think because it was kind of a thing, sometimes kings would keep, former kings in a situation where they're just sort of lower, almost like guests of the royal court, okay, here's some food and throw it to you. You're treating like a pet dog, which sounds really wrong and dehumanizing. That being said, I'm not sure if that's what actually happened. I just know some stuff I was reading that was talking about that being a common thing. And of course, you did have a light reference to that, which, again, he was saying he did that to 70 or 72 people, depending on some translations. So he's like, oh, that's fair. But he may have lived for another 30 years in an albeit humiliating way. So I don't know why I thought he died of gangrene. I guess I just assumed there wasn't a passage of time. So I assume, and there he died. So he lived, maybe he died of gangrene right away. Maybe he lived for another 30 years. I don't know. Then I do vaguely remember that 9 or 29 chapters thing where they mentioned the main point of the chapter is about having faith in God, and that Judah fails in some of its conquests because of lack of faith, and that Simeon fails in its conquest of the lands that Judah tried to do because that land wasn't, those areas of the nation wasn't Simeon's to take. So it was Simeon failed in his conquests as a tribe because they were greedy and trying to take what wasn't theirs. Which, what they were trying to take belonged to Judah. And Judah couldn't take it because they didn't have enough, self-confidence, I guess, and faith in God. It was now you're scratching your face, Lunar. No. Take a drink of water. In the future, I'll try to stay focused a bit more. Where was I? My face is itchy again. Now the children of Judah had fought against Jerusalem, and had taken it, and smitten it with the edge of the sword, and set the city on fire. And afterward the children of Judah went down to fight against the Canaanites that dwelt in the mountain, and in the south, and in the valley. And Judah went against the Canaanites that dwelt in Hebron. Now the name of Hebron before was Kirjath Arba. And they slew Sheshai and Ahiman and Talmai. And from thence he went against the inhabitants of Debir, and the name of Debir before was Kirjathsepher. Okay, so the one is Kirjath Arba, and this one's Kirjathsepher. And Caleb said, He that smiteth Kirjathsepher, and taketh it, to him I will give Aksah, my daughter, to wife. And Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, took it. I'm just thinking about the logistics of that family tree right now. Okay. And he gave him Aksah his daughter to wife. And it came to pass, when she came to him, that she moved him to ask of her father a field. And she lighted from off her ass, a donkey, by the way. And Caleb said unto her, What wilt thou? And she said unto him, Give me a blessing, for thou hast given me a southland. Give me also springs of water. And Caleb gave her the upper springs and the nether springs. And now I'm just thinking of Minecraft, the nether. And the children of Kenet, Moses' father-in-law, went up out of the city of palm trees with the children of Judah into the wilderness of Judah, which lieth in the south of Arad. And they went and dwelt among the people. And Judah went with Simeon, with his brother, and they slew the Canaanites that inhabited Zaphath, and utterly destroyed it. And the name of the city was called Hormah. And also Judah took Gaza with the coast thereof, and Ashkelon and the coast thereof, and Akron with the coast thereof. And the Lord was with Judah, and he drove out the inhabitants of the mountain, but could not drive out the inhabitants of the valley, because they had chariots of iron. And they gave Hebron unto Caleb, as Moses said, and he expelled thence the 3 sons of Anak. And the children of Benjamin did not drive out the Jebusites that inhabited Jerusalem, but the Jebusites dwell with the children of Benjamin in Jerusalem unto this day. And the house of Joseph, they also went up against Bethel, and the Lord was with them. And the house of Joseph sent to descry Bethel, now the name of the city before was Luz. And the spies saw a man come forth out of the city. And they said unto him, Show us, we pray thee, the entrance into the city, and we will show thee mercy. And when he showed them the entrance into the city, they smote the city with the edge of the sword, but they let go the man and all his family. And the man went into the land of the Hittites, and built a city, and called the name thereof Luz, which is the name thereof unto this day. Neither did Manasseh drive out the inhabitants of Bethshean and her towns, nor did Taanach and her towns, nor the inhabitants of Dor and her towns, nor the inhabitants of Ibleam and her towns, but the Canaanites would dwell in that land. And it came to pass, when Israel was strong, that they put the Canaanites to tribute, and did not utterly drive them out. Neither did Ephraim drive out the Canaanites that dwell in Gezer. But the Canaanites that dwell in Gezer, dwelt among them. Neither did Zebulun drive out the inhabitants of Kitron, nor the inhabitants of Nahalol, but the Canaanites dwelt among them, and became tributaries. Neither did Asher drive out the inhabitants of Achcho, nor the inhabitants of Zidon, nor of Elab, nor of Achzib, nor of Helbah, nor of Aphik, nor of Rehob. But the Asherites dwelt among the Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land, for they did not drive them out. Neither did Naphtali drive out the inhabitants of Bethshemesh, nor the inhabitants of Bethanath, but he dwelt among the Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land. Nevertheless, the inhabitants of Bethshemesh and of Bethanath became tributaries unto them. And the Amorites forced the children of Dan into the mountains, for they would not suffer them to come down to the valley. But the Amorites would dwell in the Mount Heres, in Aijalon, and in Shaalbim. Yet the hand of the house of Joseph prevailed, so that they became tributaries. And the coast of the Amorites was from the going up of Akrabim, from the rock and upward. So aside from my terrible pronunciations of things and my inability to focus in the future, I'll try to be a little bit more focused, where I just sort of read through a more neatly handwritten or typed version of the bulleted point list of things of note of people, dying or getting hurt. As for the total amount of people that died this time, I don't know, because it doesn't give me numbers. The only time we got numbers said 10,000. That being said, we had a whole long list of cities of people that were outright just killed. Some situations all slaughtered. Some situations, I assume there was a lot of, rape and slavery that went into this, and there's other chapters in the Bible that talk about that sort of stuff, but none of that's actually mentioned here. But given common sense, with the way every group of people was on every part of the planet for 99% of human history, I'm just saying, I I don't have high moral expectations of any group of people that is, doing a Viking raid or pillaging. I don't feel like there's certain moral rules that are being followed. So, just saying, we don't know for certain, but I feel assumptions can be made just based off of common sense. And the thing is like this. Oh, people say, oh, you don't assume, makes ass out of you and me. And here's the thing. You have to make assumptions. Otherwise, you can't, use any amount of independent thought. I mean, here's the thing. You're having a conversation with somebody. If you don't make assumption in that conversation, it's never going to go anywhere. You're going to just be having a long list of questions at all time that break up, the flow of the conversation. Like, obviously, you shouldn't jump to conclusions about things, and you should think things through, but you have to be able to make educated guesses about things. And then, you could be wrong, but that's why you discuss things and also try to look up other, information sources to back up or refute yourself. That being said, I'm just saying, in the future, I definitely have to stay more focused. But that being said, I'm open to conversations about things. But like I said, as long as people are polite and respectful, can't be like threatening violence to people or saying something racist or, saying like racial slurs and shit. But, yeah. Heck, I think I also have a few different types of Bibles. But it's also interesting to see because I've encountered a few very, very old Bibles that have very interesting artwork in them. But those are usually Bibles that exist from like a couple hundred years ago, which I do not have access to anymore. But they were very interesting to look at. But main point being is this. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. But I don't base my morality off of it. I consider everything that's written in the Bible to actually have happened. Now, of course, I feel like there's a lot of details that are omitted about how things happened. And a lot of things that are very vague. And things that I just, while I agree they happened, I don't agree with the morality of it. Like, again, I mentioned it before, the whole thing with the Israelites grumbling in the desert. It's a group of people that lived as slaves for such a long period of time that even with their grandfathers or babies, their grandfathers knew nothing but slavery. It's not like they had a really great upbringing. I mean, there's no reason to expect people that have lived a life of just abject suffering to, be, the greatest at everything. I mean, it's not like they had an option or an opportunity. And granted, I know, and I've mentioned in some community posts about like the varying numbers of how many people even lived in Egypt total and how many people left and how many died and the conditions while they were traveling and the manna being the sweet bread that has taste of honey. But here's the thing, even if the bread is the most delicious, sweet, honey tasting thing in the world, and even if it had all the proper nutrients that a human needs, I think most people would get tired of eating the same thing over and over. Plus, you're walking through the desert. Like, how could you expect someone not to complain? And also, what's that say about the system of government if, like, you're not allowed to complain to your government leaders? Like, you're not allowed to have an opinion. You're not allowed to disagree. You're not allowed to... I'm very big supporter of things like free speech. And people being, freedom of religion, freedom of, being able to discuss things. And it's just, I dislike the idea of people not being able to voice their opinions. People should be able to discuss things. as long as they are polite and respectful of each other. Because after all, the main point of a conversation should be both people are trying to understand each other, and both people are trying to explain what they think. And I'd say primarily most conversations should be based on people using logic. But I'd say the main thing is as long as people are having, a respectful conversation. Now, I would say I would doubt that I would ever be a kind of person to debate anyone, because I just tend to have a very disorganized speech pattern, and I tend to go off topic a lot. Also, I'm just not a very argumentative person. I'd be the kind of person, even if I'm discussing something with somebody I disagree with, I'd be listening to them and trying to actually just have a normal conversation. And I'd probably even forget about what we're discussing, and I would just probably start talking about Kingdom Hearts or something. So I not only really have no interest in actually debating anyone, I honestly would be, 1, terrible at it. I have no interest in it. 2, I'd be terrible at it. And 3, I would probably be the biggest fucking headache in the world for anyone trying to have that conversation with me, because they'd have to constantly be reminding me to stay on topic. And it wouldn't work. We would just be discussing trains all of a sudden. And yeah, it's and now we talk about this chapter of the manga of Berserk. Or now I talk about this old obscure retro video game on the NES that came out in 1988. Though it is interesting to look at old consoles in terms of what kind of bits they had, what kind of memory each... take the Nintendo. Think about each console in terms of how much total memory could they process and speed, as well as what each of the game cartridges or discs later on could actually hold. Heck, the original Crash Bandicoot, when it came out, they were kind of worried it was going to light PlayStations on fire, which I'm kind of glad it didn't, because then it would be... We probably would have, tanked PlayStation stocks, and as well as Naughty Dog, and we probably would have never got any more video games. But yeah, it's just interesting because you can tell there was they had to do very interesting workarounds in terms of the way the camera affects the polygons and what's actually rendered at a time, as well as they had to technically borrow a few aspects of how the PlayStation's internal memory works, which was technically kind of illegal at the time, but they did it anyway. And even then, they were still worried that the PlayStation couldn't handle it. As well as mini games, as well as the best game ever made for the original PlayStation, Brave Fencer Musashi. You could definitely tell while playing it that there are many, many things in it that you could tell they wanted to include more. And they couldn't because of the limitations of what the PlayStation could do and what the PlayStation disc could hold. Now, they did make a sequel to that game called Samurai Legend Musashi, which is an okay game in its own right, but it's absolute utter garbage to the original. Now, the sequel is on the PS2. It has horrible voice acting, surf guitar for music, and thick cel-shaded manga, where you are saving a bunch of mystic hippie people riding a space whale from an evil corporation. Whereas the original, you are saving the all-you-can-eat kingdom from the Thirst Quencher Empire. And yes, everything is a food pun. It's amazing orchestral music, beautiful brushstroke artwork, and amazing voice actors, including people from the Dot Hack Sign and Dot Hack Twilight games. Heck, I really enjoyed the Dot Hack Infection game on PS2. It's very immersive, though there was a lot to that. There's no way you're going to play all the different sort of custom levels that can exist. And granted, there were 4 of those games that came out on the PS2, and then 3 more that came in the Dot Hack GU sequel, which the sequel in and of itself was okay. At one point, I tried to start into it on this channel, but my computer couldn't handle it, so it just looked like I was running through water, very slowly, like I was stuck in the mud. But I would say, all in all, I would say the best of all the games is the very first one, Dot Hack Infection. Also, each of those game discs came with an OVA, original video animation, which many animes went through very various changes. Take Tenchi Muyo, which, by the way, I remember being quite young, fantasizing about, the characters like Mihoshi and Washu and Ryoko and Kione, because they're very pretty. Everyone's like, stop talking about waifus. I'm like, I'm just saying the original Tenchi Muyo was more of an OVA. And then, of course, you had Tenchi Universe and Tenchi in Tokyo, which was more a TV show setup. And then you had various movies. And then we returned to Tenchi Muyo to finish that story that left off. Because technically Tenchi Muyo, I feel, is the canon version of the story. But it doesn't make me enjoy Tenchi Universe or Tenchi in Tokyo any less. No, if I had to say, the ones I enjoy the most actually has to be a tie between Tenchi Muyo, and when I say Muyo, I actually include Ryo-Oki as well, which I'll get to explaining here in a second. But I like the Tenchi Muyo and Tenchi Universe about equally. They also made a few movies which were really good. Daughter of Darkness was very interesting. Now, Tenchi in Tokyo was okay. I think it's definitely still very important for an avid, if you're a fan of Tenchi series, you should definitely watch it at least once. Same with the movies. And then there's Tenchi Muyo GXP, which follows the adventures of Sena, Tenchi's younger cousin, which I think is a very good anime. And everyone's like, you just enjoy the fact that it has great music, an amazing aesthetic, and awesome voice actors. Also that there's a lot of very sexy women, okay? It's basically a show where I'm basically just oogling very beautiful women with giant tits. So, we're not going to deny that. I'm just saying, heck, I think a few days ago or so I made a post saying choose your waifu, and I gave 4 choices. I would have gave more, but 4 is apparently the maximum I can do. I gave a choice between Yoriichi Shihon, which I know I pronounced that horribly. It's the cat lady. Cat, that makes it sound terrible. The Thunder God. Well, I mean, you could mistake that for the catnip lady. Which, again, Candace Cat. But she's hot, too. Now I'm just imagining both of them naked. Anyway, aside from big titty waifus, I'm just saying, just go to my community post. You'll see a poll. You can choose who you like. I'm just saying there's the Shinigami from Bleach, who has some cat-like features and the power of electricity and is very sexy. You have Albedo from Overlord. You have Milm Nova from Reincarnated as a Slime. And we have Mihoshi from Tenchi Muyo. Though technically Mihoshi is in all of the series. That being said, I dislike that they kind of Flanderized her, where Flanderization is where you take a character and you sort of dial up a certain characteristic of them, making them more of a one-dimensional character, often at their expense, making them into a laughingstock. For example, Miyoshi was meant to be a brilliant woman, not necessarily a scientist, but she was very street savvy and very capable. And she was meant to simply be somebody who had overworked themselves and had a bit of a slight mental breakdown, but all in all was an extremely hardworking, brilliant person, albeit not scientifically, but really is still a very, very smart, capable woman who is very gifted at what they do and has a very pure heart and is actually a very sweet, lovable, cheerful person. But they focused too much on making her into some sort of dumb, stupid blonde and about her being a clumsy ditz. They basically made her a few times seem too much like she's a dumb blonde, and at other times she also made her like that she's like as clumsy as, say, Steve Urkel from Family Matters. And it's just like, I feel like it ruined the character to a degree. And I feel like when all is said and done, while I do like Ryoko, Washu, Mihoshi, and Kione all equally, I do feel like Mihoshi would perhaps make the best partner in most situations. But it's just given the fact that they basically sort of like went scorched earth on her character at times, where I feel like they, just for the sake of a cheap laugh, and don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the laugh and the comedy that we get out of it. As my laptop makes a whirring noise, it's probably going to catch fucking fire. Heck, a few months ago it was making some loud noise, and I thought I wouldn't be able to make any more videos ever again. And then it just sort of stopped. At least it's not making that noise anymore. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to hear me at all, because that was extremely loud. I'm just saying, I feel they made her look stupid, and they made her look like she's too much of a klutz. I understand. I'm clumsy too. Like, I've walked into a stop sign before, okay? I am clumsy. I can't ride a bicycle without falling over. I have a terrible sense of balance, and my hand-eye coordination sucks. I have never been athletic in my life, and I sometimes walk around and I just sort of like just trip on shit or have a bad sense of balance, okay? I'm not athletic and I'm not coordinated, and I don't have a good sense of balance, and I'm clumsy. But I feel like they just sort of like took cheap shots at her. It's like, take Goku. Goku's not meant to be not romantic as a person or dumb. It's just, one, he lived in the fucking woods. Do you expect him to do calculus? There was no, like, he wasn't an idiot, and he was actually a brilliant genius at fighting. They just kept, he's not meant to be stupid. They just kept dialing it up as a joke, and it became way out of hand, so now it defines him. Same way Ned, and then another thing with Goku is that the whole thing with Chi-Chi. Akira Toriyama is an amazing and one of the greatest manga artists and story writers to ever exist. That being said, he didn't want his story to be about romance. And he also had a lack of self-esteem in terms of Akira Toriyama did not believe he could write a good romance story. And while I think Akira Toriyama is wrong, I think Akira Toriyama could write an amazing romance story if he wanted. That being said, I do agree that I would prefer Dragon Ball Z not to be about that. While I have watched tons of hentai and rom-coms and romantic stuff, I don't want Dragon Ball Z to be about that. And Akira Toriyama wanted his show to mainly be about action with a little bit of comedy. He didn't want the romance to be in there. That being said, everyone assumed because you're not seeing, stuff with romance with Chi-Chi that Goku isn't romantic at all, and he isn't like being sexual. It's more so, it's like Batman. Why doesn't Batman kill people? One in-story reason is because he's mentally unwell and he is not psychologically healthy enough to do that without suffering severe mental health problems. Like, it would be mentally painful for him. Plus, a very strong sense of honor. Also, the community would turn against him. They would basically see him as a monster. He wouldn't be... It would have a negative effect in terms of the community, in terms of crime. And his goal is to end crime. But more importantly is this. It's rated Y7. You're having 7-year-old. You can't have a show where the hero is meant to be seen by little kids and have that hero killing people. You cannot have a show where you're having a bunch of little tiny kids, who are like in primary school, who like watch SpongeBob usually. You can't have SpongeBob going around cannibalizing people. You can't have Sonic the Hedgehog suddenly like stab out, Dr. Robotnik. Like, oh, why doesn't he do that? Because the show is meant for kids. You can't have the hero that a bunch of little kids are looking up to committing murder. That's a terrible lesson. I mean, and no parent wants their kids to be watching a show like that. That is not a lesson you want to be teaching children. Now, don't be wrong. I definitely kind of felt bad because I grew up with Pokemon, and it felt kind of shitty that, Ash Ketchum never sort of grew up and he kept like being returned to being like a dumb little kid. Like, they kept making him make stupid mistakes. Also, I liked the Orange Island League series, the season arcs the best. And I like the part where, like, in the movie with Lugia, I think it should have been canon. Because at the end of that movie, for a bit, Jesse and James become good guys. I would have liked they stayed that way. And then from then on, Jesse and James are like, they quit Team Rocket and they actually travel with Ash Ketchum. Though I would also prefer a different version of the story where like Ash Ketchum was like the same age as them, where everyone like, because it's kind of odd sending a 10-year-olds out into the fucking woods. Like, maybe it should have been like 19 or something at that time, so everyone's like the same age. And then of course, as Team Rocket was like a comedy villain at that point, then we have like a shift in tone. So where then we have Jesse and James are good guys now, and they're traveling around with Ash Ketchum and all those guys. And then the rest of Team Rocket goes like full on more Hitler, a lot more dark, more militaristic. But everyone, again, can't do that because, it'd be way too mature. But I'm saying maybe a show similar to that. And everyone's like, you're just imagining Jesse from Team Rocket naked. Yes. Yes, I am. Lunar, we were trying to talk about the Bible. Now we are discussing all your various anime crushes of all the various anime women that you want to have sex with. Anyway, main point I'm just trying to say is they flanderized Mihoshi and Goku, and they made the characters look dumb and bad just for a cheap laugh. And again, it works in terms of the story, and it has some interesting scenes, but I feel like it makes Goku look stupid, and it makes Goku look like he's not romantic. Which again, it wasn't that he wasn't romantic, it was that the show wasn't supposed to be about that. It's kind of like you're not watching, like, I'm trying to think of a show. I'm sure, like, there's One Piece. There's lots of situations where there are characters who are romantic with each other, and there's at least a little bit more leeway to show hints on that. But you're not having scenes of people full on just banging each other on the show. It's not meant to be a hentai. An example, like, I enjoy hentai. I enjoy romantic games. I enjoy games like Doki Doki Literature Club and Date Alive and Raging Loop and AI Somnium Files. And trying to think of other examples. Song of Memories. Sort of cutesy dating, maybe skirting the line about ecchi, but, being like fan servicey. Because I do like fan service in games. Though it works in some games, it works in some others. But I'd say at the end of the day is this. I'm not opposed to fan service. I feel like it's not needed in some games. In other games, it's amazing. At the end of the day, it's simply a matter of what do you enjoy to play? What kind of games do you want to play? And yeah, at the end of the day, as long as I'm enjoying the game, that's all that really matters. But yeah, I definitely enjoy a lot of fan service. But some games, I think, don't need it. So I'd say as long as it's, appropriate for the game, meaning it feels natural for the fan service to be there. Like, I don't think fan service should be like shoved into a game just to have fan service, because then if it doesn't belong, it doesn't belong. It'd be awkward. Same regard, if a game should have fan service, you shouldn't try to censor it or take it out, especially if you're taking something from another part of the world and you're trying to make it more appropriate for another audience. But then again, there's also other stories that, have very deep philosophical points about psychology, but have a few very questionable story narrative choices in terms of things that happen that are perhaps a bit gross, that perhaps kind of overshadow all of the deeper things that are covered by the story. And then the game is just known for the few things that went really, really wrong in it. And that's the same thing true of various animes. There's some animes that have very questionable choices about decisions that happen in it, or certain scenes, or even certain things that you even have the main character, your protagonist, do that can be seen as very questionable. And while that, I do feel it kind of limits the reach of the show sometimes, on other times it's kind of the point. I mean, they're trying to tell a point, they're trying to tell a story, and the point of that is for their story. It's just, especially in some horror games and horror movies, it's meant to make you uncomfortable. I mean, heck, it's like, say the story To Kill a Mockingbird. A lot of people say that people shouldn't read that anymore because the story's racist and it makes you feel uncomfortable. And I'm like, that's the point. It's supposed to be an accurate depiction of what history was like. How are we supposed to learn from history if you try to edit and censor it? Obviously, racism is bad, but how can we understand the past if we don't understand what it was like in the past? And those books like that, like To Kill a Mockingbird, are an accurate way to try to help people understand what that was like. I mean, without that, how are we supposed to grow as a people? Also, I just really like good stories. But I'm just saying there are some stories that have very questionable things that happen in it that I think sometimes turn a lot of people off from the story. But at the same time, those ideas in the story are, albeit a bit disturbing at times, are there for a reason and are part of the narrative that the author is trying to point. Paint, whatever. Or point to, or whatever. Main point is, in generally, I'm pretty much against censorship, but I also feel like, very mature animes or hentais and stuff should not be available, just all willy-nilly. Like, you shouldn't have, take Bible Black. Bible Black is an absolutely amazing story, and it's a very old anime, and it is hentai, and it has, I'd say the best thing about it of all is just the music. The music is very good. And aside from the fact that, yes, it's hentai, there's lots of sex scenes and tits and shit, but I'm just saying, the way the anime characters are drawn, it's very good. The aesthetic for how the characters are drawn, as well as the way they are animated, is very good. So, completely ignoring all of the sexual content of the show, in of itself, in terms of just the music and the art style and the way it's animated, absolutely 10 out of 10. Now, also 10 out of 10 for the hentai scenes, but I want to try to give a evaluation of it in a way that ignores all of the hentai. If you ignore all the hentai scenes and just sort of cut those out, it's still a 10 out of 10. Everything's amazing. That being said, don't you dare cut that hentai out. It's awesome. But I'm just saying, you shouldn't find that at, the public library for anybody to check out. That shouldn't be, in a school or just casually, sitting around, there's rating systems for a reason. But I'm against censorship. But again, you know what you're buying. That's what the whole point of the rating system is. At the end of the day is this. If anything, just give a choice to the person playing a game. Say, you release the game at a certain rating, but say, hey, if you don't want to see certain things, you can click a little box and it, blurs whatever, or cuts a few scenes. But you should be able to play a game in its full, unaltered form if you want. Heck, they're supposed to be making a Gex remaster trilogy at some point. I think that'd be really cool. But yeah, I'm just saying they flanderized Mihoshi and Goku. I'm flanderized, again, what do you mean by that? Ned Flanders, The Simpsons. Originally, he was supposed to be just your normal average dude. He was supposed to be just your average guy who went to church. And not he was an overly religious person either. He was supposed to be literally your average man. The average, especially back then, the average man would just go to church with his family. That was normal back then. That was extremely common. It was far more rare for somebody to not go to church. But he was supposed to just be your normal church-going man. To basically, if you're doing a comedy routine, he was supposed to be the straight man to Homer's, wacky shenanigans. And over time, they just kept rehashing that one single trait over and over to such an extreme, they made it his entire personality. They took away something that should have been an additional aspect of his personality that could allow him to become a more in-depth, live character. And they just sort of turn him into a one-dimensional joke. And the same thing with Mihoshi, and it's the same thing with Goku. I feel a lot of the stuff they did where, again, the main reason he wasn't romantic with Chi-Chi in the show is because Akira Toriyama didn't want his show to be a romance show. He wanted it to be an action show. The fact that Goku wasn't seen in scenes of banging Chi-Chi's brains out, just fucking her until she's screaming, doesn't mean they're not having sex. It just means it's a show meant for kids, and he doesn't want his show to be about, hentai. And I'm glad he didn't, because I don't want Dragon Ball Z to be about hentai. After all, if I want to see hentai of like Bulma or something, I can look that up on Google image search or whatever. I'm just saying, I don't want that show to be about that. I want it to be awesome action and all that. But it's just they took Goku not being openly romantic with Chi-Chi in the show as saying, oh, we don't see it. It must not exist. Like, we're treating the audience like we're a bunch of infants. Like, ooh, look at the jiggly keys. Look at the jiggly keys. And then you move the keys out of view. Like, oh, I don't see the keys. They must not exist anymore. That's how you're treating Goku in terms of romance with Chi-Chi. It's just like the fact that, oh, you don't see it. It must not exist. Like, no, the show's not meant to be about that. Same way, Goku was not meant to be stupid. It was just supposed to be like he wasn't exactly like familiar with the world. I mean, it was supposed to be lighthearted naivety, purity. Like he wasn't, it's not that, oh, he was too stupid to understand how, say, cars worked and stuff. It's just he'd never seen such a thing before. I mean, here's the thing. Like, say if you were trying to explain geometry to somebody in the Middle Ages, it's not that they're stupid. It's just a lot of them didn't have access to that stuff. And different people had different, parts in life in terms of what they were doing. As well as there's many things that people like, say, a cobbler who would be really good at making shoes, I wouldn't know the first thing about how to do that. Or say a lot of, like me, if I was back in the past, a lot of situations, I'd probably be useless. Like there's a lot of things that are completely useless skills nowadays, except in very, very rare circumstances, that in the past were like necessary for survival. So there are many things that back then they would have to be teaching me. But it's, again, if I were to be trying to explain the basic concepts of, say, geometry or Pythagorean theorem or pi or the way outer space works or atoms or nuclear bombs or electricity, they would be able to figure it out, provided they don't think I'm like a witch or something or a blasphemer or a heretic for talking about how the earth goes around the sun or the earth is a ball or about electricity or vaccines or whatever. And because I imagine a lot of people might consider me to be using magic or just blasphemy. And that's another thing. A lot of times in the past, a lot of the churches, it was just more about you agree with what you're told by the government. And again, I understand government's a very necessary function of, society. It's just, I dislike how in the past, like if you disagreed, you're like, oh, blasphemer, heretic. Now, obviously, I feel like no one should be, trying to shame or insult God at any point, and especially not the Holy Ghost or Jesus, but I think people should be able to have open opinions and question things, and especially question the government. And that's the thing, like Moses, like the people were wandering the desert. They were complaining about wanting meat. They were complaining about wanting cucumbers. I understand the modern taste palette has changed with all the chemicals and sugar and salt we have, and I understand cucumbers probably tasted a bit differently back then, especially given the fact they are probably, like, I don't know where the cucumbers I eat or pickles I eat come from. All I know is they're probably not from around Egypt. And I would imagine cucumbers grown somewhere in America in 2024 taste different, especially given pickled, than ones grown like 4,000 years ago in Egypt. That being said, if you have a group of people complaining about how they want cucumbers, something is wrong. Hell, and especially I can't blame them for wanting meat. I mean, like I said, even if this food, the manna was delicious, even if it had all the nutrients you needed, I mean, how often have you driven past like a Burger King or a KFC and a Taco Bell or a pizza and you're like, I need a pepperoni pizza, or enjoyed a nice, Frappuccino thing from Starbucks, or got some ice cream or some Dairy Queen, or got some pulled pork or a pepperoni pizza. That is delicious. Heck, I remember there was like an Egyptian god whose favorite food was lettuce. How is your favorite food lettuce? How? How is that a thing? I would look at somebody weird if they said their favorite food was salad. And they were like, yeah, my favorite food's salad. I like having some lettuce and some salt and pepper and ranch dressing and banana peppers and pepperoni and mushrooms and pepperoni and shredded cheese and more ranch and some onions and some tomatoes and all that and some croutons. Even that, I'd still look at you weird. But at this point, if you say your favorite food's lettuce, like what are you? Just taking a whole fucking head of lettuce, standing over your sink, and then just like occasionally salting the part that you plan to bite into the whole head of lettuce, like you're just standing over a sink and just shoving your face into the big, ball. Heck, at that point, just get 2 heads of lettuce and you pretend they're tits. At which point, you're just making them wet because you're just sort of like motorboating them. Everyone's like, you're being gross. I could be grosser. It's like if we're talking about cucumbers, what's the difference between being hungry and being horny? Where you stick the cucumber. Yeah. And everyone's like, that's terrible. Things in the past would never say such degeneracy. Oh, but back to the Egyptian god thing. Not only is the person saying their favorite food is fucking lettuce, but there's another Egyptian god, steals the dude's lettuce, and it's a whole gooning story. It's a whole damn gooning story, where the other Egyptian god steals the other one's lettuce, and then just sort of ejaculates into his lettuce, without the other guy knowing, and the other guy just eats the cum-filled lettuce. It's literally a story about gooning. And it goes further. Heck, there's so many stories in various religions about life being started because a god gooned into the river. Heck, it was usually a fertility ritual of a lot of Egyptian pharaohs. Just, oh, well, you're a pharaoh now. Go jack off in the river. Which probably would not be very sanitary. Just saying. How can your favorite food be fucking lettuce? At this point, I feel like it was a story of like, they're walking by and they're like yelling at Moses saying, Moses, can we stop at Burger King? Can we stop at Burger King? They got a new sandwich. I want to try it. And we're like, eat your vitamin-infused waffles covered in maple syrup and honey. Which sounds awesome and delicious. Then again, I'm attempting to lose a little bit of weight. Not eaten in like 50 hours. 60 hours. 60 hours. I haven't eaten anything in 60 hours. I do, however, recently, like I went to the bike trail yesterday, and I've been going bike trail just about every day, but I stopped at the grocery store afterward, and I got some pickles, and so that doesn't count as food. Yeah, it doesn't count as food. And I'm thinking about chocolate cake. I want some chocolate cake. You guys ever the thing where you like describe chocolate cake as goth lasagna? Just imagining chocolate cake. Now I'm imagining Mihoshi naked. I don't know what the point of this was. I was supposed to stay focused. I did not. I'll try to definitely be more focused in the future. Main point being is I want to try to do a thing where I go through and just sort of try to notice all the times people die or are murdered or are hurt in the Bible, or anything that can be considered fucked up occurs. As well as I'll just be reading the Bible. I'm also open to any sort of discussions about anything, but as long as everyone's respectful of one another. That being said, this isn't like any sort of Bible study. It's just listen to crazy guy have schizo posting moments. That's what this is. And even then, I'm not even doing that right because I'm not able to stay focused on the schizo part of it. I'm like, oh, here's this crazy thing about the Bible. By the way, anime titties. So, yeah. I would definitely get kicked out of a church if I started trying to talk about this stuff then. It's like, yeah, we were having a conversation about Noah, and then we went into creepypastas, and then we had a conversation, I don't know, Book of Revelations, and we start talking about tentacle hentai. I'm just saying, this is not a professional way of doing this. And I feel everyone is dumber for having listened to me. You have 3 seconds to guess what the reference is to. It's an Adam Sandler movie. But yeah. This is, I don't know what the point of this video is. It's me just basically rambling about stuff. It's just I believe in God, but of course I have various disagreements on certain things, and of course opinions on certain things. But all in all, I will say this: I do believe the Bible is the accurate, truth of the world. Yeah, everything written here did occur. Now, is there a lot of stuff that's left out? Is there stuff that's vague? Is there stuff I don't understand? Hell yes, to every fucking one of those. End of the day is this: I believe in God, but I feel like most people of all faiths, especially Christians, Jews, Muslims, and just about everyone else, that their idea of what hell basically is based pretty much a lot of like Dante's Inferno. Now, granted, I understand a lot of that you can see in, Greek stories or the ancient Sumerian myths. And heck, I think a lot of the old things that they saw in Sumeria of it, I mean, they were inducing visions with various deliriants that were plants back then, like 6,000 years ago. So, but in general, I'd say there's probably some truth to some things, but I would like to say I find the idea of such a place unjustifiable. And I think things like the Hellraiser movie, or just the horrible things that have happened in human history, or cursed games like Demonophobia, the idea that people are going through that stuff, or going through it for eternity, seems really fucked up. And it seems like there's no justification for such cruelty. And as well as the fact that it's a lot of times the rules are basically arbitrary or overly strict or even hypocritical. And the punishments are way too excessive. It's not at all proportional. It's almost like we're having a fucking military helicopter enforcing a speed limit, shooting someone with a fucking rocket. Like, oh, you went a few miles over the speed limit. We're going to light you up with a minigun. And again, there's a lot of things like, yeah, there are a few things I disagree with, but at the end of the day, there are, of course, many things I still agree with in the Bible as terms of rules that I think are just. And again, I make those decisions because I go with the rules that I seem are common sense. Like, thou shalt not kill. That's a pretty common idea. Like, and again, there's some situations like, self-defense, war, there's circumstances. But in general, people shouldn't kill each other. I would think that even if I had never read the Bible once in my life. That being said, other rules like don't eat bacon. I love eating bacon. That being said, it would make sense not to eat bacon in the past because sometimes bacon would be, procured in less than hygienic ways. And so you'd have people getting foodborne illnesses, food poisoning, or, getting parasites. I mean, there's types of pork worms that would burrow into people's brains. Now, of course, people in the past didn't know that. All they know is all of a sudden this person who ate some pork, and usually ate a lot of it, and never mind the whole heart disease issue, or weight gain or health problems, but more along the lines of this person who ate pork suddenly is vomiting blood, and is very violent and psychotic and aggressive, and then sort of dies having a seizure. It's like, let's not eat pork or shellfish. It's a way to avoid people dying or spreading an illness. And that's saying many of the laws back then were literally just the result of the fact that we didn't have proper medical care, we didn't have antibiotics, and yeah, a lot of it was more so about, a lot of the rules were based around just keeping people alive, making do with what they had technologically. But I mean, like, one of the first rules they should have had been no slavery, especially when the Ten Commandments came around. I mean, the people were just slaves themselves. And yet later on, they're taking slaves too. I mean, there's no law against having slaves. There's a law saying not to covet your neighbor's slave. And then, of course, and a lot of the rules set were more along cultural traditions for the Jewish people themselves to have. They weren't really issues of morality, just something to separate themselves from everyone around them. I'd say the main thing is people just use common sense. Treat everyone with kindness. Treat yourself with kindness. Treat other people with kindness. Now, you shouldn't go out trying to, hurt other people, but of course, if someone tries to hurt you, defend yourself. Now, like I said, use common sense, but again, don't be a doormat. Don't let people mistreat you or force their beliefs on you or try to hurt you. But everyone should be able to have an open discussion about things without feeling that anybody's forcing anything on each other. Like, you should be able to have just a normal, open conversation with people, even if you completely disagree with whatever it is they believe or think. And at the end of the day, you either at least understand the person better, or you at least understand that you have a complete incompatibility in terms of what your beliefs are, and that there is no common ground, and that the two of you should just avoid the hell out of each other. Because there are some people, especially of certain religions, that are not compatible. Like, I would say if you took like the most, Orthodox Christian and the most Orthodox Jew and the most strict, Sharia law Muslim, I don't think they would get along, especially if they were neighbors. So I think in some situations like that, it would be best if people did not live near each other in that situation. Mainly because while I think it's important for everyone to try to understand each other, there are some groups of people that are just not going to be able to get along. Like, I can't see that ending any other way other than violence. And it's just, at that point, you're just like, use common sense. And people say, oh no, they should be able to live around each other. Like, I understand that. But even as a very idealistic person myself, that's complete fucking bullshit. And you're out of your mind, and you are probably smoking pot if you think that's possible. It is completely unrealistic. You have to have some, like, here's the thing. It's good to have a sort of romanticized ideal of certain ideas and to want that to be real. But you also, you cannot just, not acknowledge reality. Reality isn't going to change no matter how much you disagree with it. It doesn't matter what your feelings are on the matter. Facts are facts. That being said, you can have an accurate understanding of what's going on around you and try to find the best, most benevolent solution that is the least violent option. And that's the thing. There's some schools of thought and ideologies that are completely incompatible. Same way there are some people that, even if they are both of the same religion, even if they're the same, way of thinking, some people's personalities are completely incompatible, whether it's in relationships or as friends or even as acquaintances, even as a coworker. There are some people that, and of course, there's some people I've worked with that are just like, you can't fucking stand them. And everyone's like, well, can anyone fucking stand you, Lunar? I'm like, it's not really that hard. In fact, usually the biggest problem I have is people find it odd that I'm very non-confrontational. So most people just consider me a pussy and a coward. But at the end of the day, it's just like, I just don't see any desire to be confrontational. And at the end of the day, it's not something fun. Like, I'd rather just be able to relax. So, I'd rather not have some big argument and fight with somebody. Like, I'm not about to be the person trying to have a debate with anybody. I'll have conversations with people. And of course, if it's noticeable the person really does not like having that conversation, then of course, I'm not going to have that conversation with them. Heck, for the most part in life, I don't talk to people. For the most of my life, I mean, heck, especially when it comes to emotions and stuff, I tend to bottle that shit up. I mean, aside from people literally dying, nobody has seen me cry ever. I don't really talk about my feelings, except in very severe circumstances as far as IRL. Like, there's some times that I've had some things go on that were a bit much, and I basically talked a few of my friends' ears off. But yeah, though I do talk about shit all the time here on the channel, but again, the channel is me talking about whatever's on my mind without a filter. Or I guess any amount of organization. And again, the way this video is gone, it's why most people probably write scripts and try to stick to a single topic in a video. But again, in future videos of this, I'll try to just, read just the bullet point list and then just read the scripture and then try to avoid adding in any opinions of my own. And while I will very strongly be trying to do that, I have absolutely no faith in my own ability to do that. So I will probably fail badly. But there will at least be an attempt that I will fail. But main point being is just, I believe very strongly in God and in the Bible, but I disagree with many points, and I think a lot of people don't like the Hellraiser thing or the hell thing. A lot of people say, oh, hell is justified and hell is like the way it is in the Bible and this is the way it is, but take a moment to think about what that actually is like. And then if you even have a shred of empathy, I mean, how can you feel that anybody deserves to suffer like that? And the same way, like I believe in God. I believe in the Bible. I believe in the Holy Ghost. I even have the Holy Ghost. And I've spoken in tongues back when I was 13 in the church and all that. That being said, I bet, I spent a lot of time in the church when I was younger. Baptized, spoken in tongues, all that. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. I believe Jesus died on the cross, came back from the dead. But there's a lot of things in terms of how certain things are and in certain rules that I disagree with. And that I feel that a lot of people say, oh, you're cherry picking on certain things. I'm like, so are you. Like, there's a lot of things that go to very ridiculous extremes if you really sit down and evaluate how people of those times would approach a lot of laws we have nowadays. So, I mean, I'm not about to take a system of law seriously if it would be calling for very, very horrible things that unless you reason to people that it was because of the Bible, that everyone across the board, even the most devout person, would condemn it as evil. So, I just say it's very important to read the Bible as well as to read everything else you can, but I don't base my morality off of it. I base morality off of kindness and logic, and even then, I feel that there's a lot of people who disagree with me on many, many things. And to that I say, I'm not changing my mind and I'm not apologizing for shit. I mean, I might apologize for my terrible singing, but I still enjoy singing. I'm still going to do it. End of the day is this. I always discuss any opinion or belief or philosophy, and I'll always be open-minded to trying to understand somebody else. Though I'd hope they'd give me the benefit of the doubt and try to be open-minded to me as well. That being said, I'm not apologizing for a fucking thing. Like, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of my morality, I have never done a damn thing fucking wrong once. Am I perfect? No, I'm not a fucking saint. All I'm saying is I've not done anything that I should be ashamed of, or that is morally wrong. Now, I haven't watched Yu Yu Hakusho in a while. So why do you think about Chapter Black? I was thinking about Chapter Black holding my Bible and all that. Like I said, I like... Oh, if you've ever watched Yu Yu Hakusho, after my little spacing out where I was just thinking about Chapter Black and trying to think of which fight I thought was the best, which honestly, I think I'm more... What is the word? Favored? Partial? Partial? Maybe that's it. I don't know the right word for this. I'm more of a fan of the first round of the fight with Yusuke and Sensui. Because technically that first one's in the one in the street. The second one's when they fight in that cave and Yusuke dies. And the third one when, they're in Demon World. Which I'd say out of all the arcs, maybe Chapter Black is perhaps one of the best, though the dark tournament with Chu and Jin and Suzaku and Toguro, absolutely amazing fights. And some of the animation changed styles a few times, but it was awesome. But yeah, everyone's like, stop spacing out. There's multiple times where I'm just spacing out, becoming quiet, not saying a word. So I'm just thinking about anime stuff. Whether it's cool anime fights or awesome anime titties or a cute girl with an amazingly cute face. I'm just saying Mihoshi's really pretty. Everyone's like, we can hear the thought of you imagining banging Mihoshi. I'm just saying, she looks really cute. And like I said, I feel like they did Flanderize her a bit. She was supposed to be a little bit clumsy at times and maybe a little bit ditzy when it comes to the advanced super calculus bullshit that Washu can do, which is awesome, it's incredible, but let's be clear, I wouldn't understand the first thing of that. And I at least have an understanding to some degree of that stuff. Granted, I haven't really, taken any classes on it in a long, long time. But I do find it fascinating. I'm just saying I wouldn't understand it. And I'm sure there's plenty of real life people that are good at calculus that would be writing equations that I wouldn't be able to follow anymore. Because like I said, I've forgotten a lot of things. Concussions probably didn't help. But I'm just saying Mihoshi is very pretty. And all in all, aside from the little bit of Flanderization they do to her in the character, she is actually a really incredible, fascinating person. And she's not only somebody who would make an amazing friend, but they would actually make an amazing wife. They're all around just an amazing person. That being said, and like I said, they would make an amazing friend too, just someone to talk to. I can imagine it would just be really pleasant just being around her. And I think that she would actually be a very sweet, loving partner. But yeah, Tenchi Muyo and Tenchi Universe I like quite a bit. But, oh yeah, what's your favorite arc in the Yu Yu Hakusho series? And out of that arc, what are your favorite fights? And what are scenes you really like quite a bit? Though I'd say a lot of times there's some things in scenes of shows where sometimes paying attention to very small details is very important. For example, take Sayori from Doki Doki Literature Club. When she is hanging from that noose, which is, of course, a very depressing scene. If you look at her fingers, you look at her hands. Next time you see that scene, look at her hands, look at her fingers, and you'll notice that there's red there, there's blood there. And it becomes very apparent. The reason why there's a lot of bleeding and red from her fingers is that after Sayori hung herself to commit suicide, she was trying to free herself. Basically, after she had hung herself and, made the, kicked the chair away to sort of, she obviously changed her mind. And so the reason her hands are bleeding is because she was forcing her fingers underneath the rope, pulling with all of her strength, trying to free herself. Because at the end of the day, when it was all said and done, she didn't want to die. She didn't want to die. She was trying to save her own life. And obviously it didn't work, and you see her hands covered in, because she was struggling that hard that she was cutting open her own fingers, trying to get that noose off. Heck, I think usually a lot of stories come from people that jump from high places to commit suicide. When those people jump off, a lot of the people that survive, because you can't really get a story of what was going through their head afterward from people that, died, because you can't talk to them anymore. But the people that survive, almost across the board, they wind up saying, yeah, about halfway down, I had a change of heart, and I didn't feel the same, and I felt, oh shit, I think this is a bad idea. So, I don't know, PSA, don't kill yourself. Which obviously sounds a bit crass saying it like that, but as a depressed person myself, I would never ever try to do anything to harm myself, but I certainly do feel down at times. So again, I'm a failure at everything. I mean, I would say to most people, you'd want someone successful to give you some sort of pep talk. I'm not that guy. I'm a failure, and my advice is you to keep trying. Always keep going. Never commit suicide, never harm yourself. Always try to find someone to talk to or do something. I'm just saying, even if you feel down at that time, keep going, keep trying. I would say the best advice I'd give to you is just find family, friends, people you care about. People that care about you, talk to them. Listen to some music. Play, there's always some, even if you feel down about stuff, there's always an amazing anime or a video game to check out. And there's always something you can do, especially if there are things that have gone wrong in your life. There's always something you do to try to make it better. And if not, still try. Like I said, that's my main advice to everyone, is just never give up. Always keep trying. Believe in yourselves. But yeah, like I said, that thing with Sayori is just the fact that you look at her fingers, they're bleeding, they're covered in sores and stuff. She was trying with all her strength to pull that noose off her neck and to not die. She was trying to not die. She had her fingers under there, and she was pulling with all of her strength to the point that she cut open her own hands in order to try to free herself. Forget what I'm talking about. Something about tenchi, muyo, and Yu Hakusho, and I don't know. I'm just saying, in Yu Hakusho and a lot of shows, there's very small details. And same thing with the aesthetics, whether it's Bible Black or tenchi, just the color palettes used, the way the people are drawn, the way the backgrounds are, the way the trees move in the wind. That's awesome. And also, there are really great songs, whether it's the background music or even just Dimension of Love's a really great song, or Lonely Moon, or a lot of times the opening and closing songs to various animes. Now, of course, War on Geminar is a good anime, and let's see, there's Tenchi Muyo AI, and there's also Tenchi Muyo Love, which I think is the same show, just different. It's the English word for the AI, which is love. But there's a few other Tenchi, like Tenchi Forever and stuff like that. But main point being, there are really great Tenchi shows. But I would say, Tenchi Muyo's, where it starts off, it's an OVA. And then they rebooted the series and changed a lot of the characters' origins and changed a bit about what was happening and did it as Tenchi Universe. And they went through all that as a relatively complete show. And most of the movies are based off Tenchi Universe. Then they did Tenchi in Tokyo, where they sort of rebooted again and changed the story up again. Then Tenchi Muyo GXP is a continuation of the story with Seina's younger cousin. Geminar is a story, I believe, about Tenchi's child. And let's see, AI is about a sort of pseudo side story. It was written as sort of a anniversary special. And then Forever I Can't Remember. And there's also lots of other side stories and movies and stuff. But the main canon version of it is Tenchi Muyo and Tenchi Muyo Ryo-Oki, which are absolutely amazing. I mean, the very ending of Tenchi Muyo Ryo-Oki is the fight with Z, which basically you have like Dragon Ball Z level fights at this point. But yeah, Tenchi Muyo I would very strongly suggest to people. Same way with Bubblegum Crisis Tokyo 2040, which is technically the reboot of a reboot. Because technically you have the original Bubblegum Crisis in like 1960s or something. Then there's also a show called Bubblegum Crash. And then, of course, you have Bubblegum Crisis Tokyo 2040. I also strongly suggest the Slayers anime, which has Lena Inverse in it, which has many light novels, many movies, and many seasons. It's, the main trilogy is 3 seasons. And then, of course, there's many reboots and redos of that. There's also fan fictions by a person called Stefan Gagne, Stefangane. I actually made 2 videos about it once. The first video was sort of an introduction talking about it, and the second video was me reading the first chapter of Slayers Virtual. Now, Slayers Virtual is a sort of cyberpunk reimagining of the very first season of Slayers, and Slayers Diemerge is a sort of single novel continuation of the end of the 3rd season of the trilogy, of the main animation of it. And then you have perhaps the best work by Stefan Gagne, a whole trilogy of Reflection, Chaos, and Rebirth, which are 3 very long novels written by him, which has his best writing of all, which are a continuation of the 3rd season as well, just like Diemerge, but a completely different story. And it's absolutely incredible. Now, granted, he's also written many other stories, and there's lots of various fan fictions. Also, I would strongly recommend the light novels, the official light novels of Overlord, including an Overlord light novel called The Vampire, the Lost Country. Princess, whatever. Beyond that, there's if you like Warhammer 40k and if you like Evangelion with Shinji Ikari, there is a extraordinarily, unbelievably long fan fiction called Shinji and Warhammer 40k. Most of these things you can find audiobooks of. Also, I again strongly recommend Berserk of Gluttony. It's a light novel. No, I'm not talking about Berserk, the one with Guts and Griffith. It's got Fate Graphite, who later becomes named Fate Barbatos. And it's about One Piece's level of maturity. So it's definitely not as violent as, say, another show that goes by the name of Berserk. Then there's Vivi's, Flori's, and then I mentioned the Ministry of Off-Brand video. And then, of course, there's a manga called Holy Land I very strongly suggest. I can go on about anime forever, but I'm probably boring everybody. But anyway, I'm just saying Tenchi Muyo is really good. Miyoshi's very pretty. So is Albedo from Overlord. Heck, I think a Dragon Ball Z fusion of Albedo from Overlord and Roll Casket from Mega Man Legends would both be a very beautiful looking person, as well as I think would have a very amazing personality. Okay, well, I'm going to end the video after I've just... Again, I don't know if I actually have ADHD or autism, but I kind of feel it's very likely. Especially since any of those online tests that I've taken, which, again, are not actual medically approved professional stuff. But all of those are very yep, you're very strongly ADHD and autism. But since I haven't actually ever been diagnosed by an actual doctor, who knows? Probably not. Maybe I'm just very eccentric. Everyone's like, you're just annoying, Lunar, and boring. I'm like, yeah, I know. But yeah, definitely check out... Oh, there's another light novel called The Hidden Dungeon Only I Can Enter. It is by Meguro Seto and Takahana Note. It is also a very good story. And again, I mentioned before, Brave Fencer Musashi, you know, it's a very good game for the original PlayStation. I very strongly suggest it. It's a shame it's not on Steam. I still want Mega Man Legends 3. And I want the original Brave Fencer Musashi in its true, unaltered form available on the PS5. As well as I want, I guess, Samurai Legend Musashi. As well as any plans they had for a Brave Fencer Musashi 3 to be, somewhat playable. As well as all of the extra content that they ever had in mind for the original Brave Fencer Musashi to be available. As well as a full-on new Brave Fencer Musashi. Though the way the gameplay is, while the game mechanics for both Samurai Legend and Brave Fencer are very different, they're both very good. But all around, in every regard, I like Brave Fencer better. But I know I've said many times I would imagine that, like if you did a redo of the original, like Mega Man Legends, like what if you had like a DBZ fusion of, say, Mega Man Juno and Gravelord Nito from Dark Souls? Like make like a Dark Souls type game. Like make a Mega Man Legends 3, but have it play like Dark Souls with a gun. Or like Halo. You could have it play like Halo 3. That would be pretty cool, or the original Halo. Yeah, what if you did like... You did a Mega Man Legends 3, or call it 4, because there was technically some stuff in line for Mega Man Legends 3. So you make like a small game base, call it Mega Man Legends 3, but then you make a thing just outright called Mega Man Legends 4, and it is... it's Mega Man, it's a finality of that story, and you sort of combine the graphics in the gameplay of, say, Dark Souls and Halo 1. Heck, I think like if we had a third Brave Fencer Musashi game, like what if it was like a combination of, I don't know, like Doom Eternal and Elden Ring. Heck, there's a game like Black Myth Wukong. It's looks like Elden Ring, but like really fast. I can't say I know too much about it. I've seen some gameplay trailers and some people talking about it. And from what I can tell of it, it just looks, the graphics, it looks incredible. I'm not even sure a PS5 would actually handle that. It looks really good. But it looks like it moves really quick. Like almost like Bloodborne, but faster. And that's one thing that's really cool, like really fast-paced games. I still want to, even though I was really horrible at it, I still want a game like Thumper to play. Even though I was yelling and cussing that whole gameplay. If the original, I refuse to get an emulator, but if Super Mario World, or Super Mario 1 or 3, or any of those games was available on Steam, I would definitely get it and play it. Horribly, mind you, but I would have such a fucking blast. But I'm just saying, if you know any games on Steam that are like Super Mario World, let me know. I'll at least consider them. Now, granted, I have no guarantees I'll play anything. More than likely, the only way I'll pay full price for a game is if it just came out and I'm buying it new. But usually, if I have a game's been out for a while, I'll put it on a wish list and I'll buy it when it's on sale for at least like 50% off. That way I can get it as cheap as possible. And of course, if I see a game, I might not get it. Like I said, I promise nothing. I guarantee even less. And the only thing consistent about my channel is, a complete and total lack of professionalism. Heck, at this point, I might as well just say, heck, I'm gooning. Let's just say I'm gooning in every fucking video. Now, if that was the case, I'd actually be like, I don't know, happier or something? I don't know. Hey, I'd at least stay focused on something. But yeah, I just think a Mega Man Legends 3 would be awesome, and a Brave Fencer Musashi 3. But I am seeing a lot of new games that are coming out that, like the Wukong game. I think it's doing the idea of that game better than I ever could have imagined with a brand new story. So that's awesome, and it looks so cool. That being said, I still want a lot of the older games to be available. Like, on the NES, Mario 1, Mario 3, I know technically on Super Nintendo, but Super Mario World, but back to the NES, Swords and Serpents, Robo Warrior, Dragon Spirit, The New Legend, Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest, and I guess technically Battle Kid 1, Fortress of Peril, and Battle Kid 2, Mountain of Torment. Heck, I don't know why you can't get I Want to Be the Guy on like PlayStation or Steam or something, let alone the Battle Kid games. And of course on Genesis you have things like Space Harrier, Vector Man 2, Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel, Kid Chameleon. Lots of really great games. Of course the Sonic the Hedgehog games are incredible. PlayStation you have things like Blam, Machine Head, Sonic Shuffle. All the Final Fantasy games are incredible. Like, you guys remember the Leafy Tree from Final Fantasy IX? And again, like, I still think it'd be a cool, like, a touch grass idea. Like, just imagine huge VR worlds built off of just video game environments from, like, Mega Man Legends or Musashi or Castlevania. Or, heck, imagine a VR world that's just based off of the world of just walking around the streets of Bloodborne. You know? Just imagine like Final Fantasy VIII, all the levels of Final Fantasy VIII, but you can wander around like Balaam Garden or any of the places in Final Fantasy VIII, and you just walk around it and just talk to random people about whatever people talk about in VR chat. You know, then again, I'm the kind of person like I went on VR chat a couple times, primarily I think about half a year ago, like a couple days or a day before I had to go get a surgery. Basically, my bladder hated me. So, fuck you, genetics. Anyway, even in a place that's meant to be easy for people with anxiety to talk to, and granted, I talk to people fairly well and fine in public. I can hold conversations just fine. And I can be, adapt to whatever is comfortable for them. It's not that hard to understand what somebody wants to talk about and just talk about what they want to talk about and occasionally bring up other things. Whereas here, it's just a complete chaotic mess where I'm just letting everything come out without any regard. But, like, going to VR chat, my first thing I did was I was in a place where it looked like it was a large skyscraper, and it was raining outside in a big city. And in a game we were supposed to be talking to people, I just went to the window and just stood there and just stared at the imaginary rain, the imaginary city, not talking to anybody. I was antisocial in a place where you're supposed to be sociable. But yeah, just cool. Like, imagine, like, just 3D walk-in environments of, even especially in VR, of, say, the old school games. Heck, again, on the PlayStation, the old Crash Bandicoot games, the original Spyro the Dragon. And I'll say this, I love my mom very much, and I really enjoyed sitting and playing a lot of those games with her, like Spyro the Dragon and Super Mario 3 and Crash Bandicoot 2. Though we played probably the most of the original Super Mario 1, and Mario 3. But also, my mom is a really good cook. Or at least she used to be. She doesn't really have much of a reason to cook too much anymore. It's just her and Dad living alone. But she was a really good cook, and a lot of times I would just sit in there with her while she's cooking dinner, and I would just talk to my mom about whatever. And I appreciated that. I love my mom very much. And I love my son very much too. But yeah, as far as Genesis, I mean, there are all sorts of really great games. And heck, PlayStation, there are some games that obscure, like Croc Legend of Gobos, or the Jersey Devil, or Desert Strike. And of course, like I said, I already mentioned a lot of other games. The Final Fantasy Tactics is great. Grandia 3, Star Ocean Till the End of Time, Dragon Quest 8. Jessica from that game, oh my god, she is hot. And everyone's like, stop talking about how much you like anime girls. I like anime girls. I like big titties. Just saying. Jessica from Dragon Quest 8, absolutely sexy. Just, and everyone's like, you're just spacing out imagining cute anime girls. Yes. Yes, I am. That being said, Shining Force EXA for the PS2. Absolutely amazing game. Cannot recommend it strongly enough. Soul Nomad's a good one too. But yeah, definitely. Brave Fence and Musashi, the original PlayStation, as well as Shining Force EXA. Now, granted, I like the original Shining Force 2. No, Shining Force 1 I like, and Shining Force 5, which is EXA, I like. The other Shining Forces I don't like. But yeah, Shining Force 1 and Shining Force EXA. Shining Force 1 is kind of like a Final Fantasy Tactics game. It's amazing. So Shining Force 1 on the Sega Genesis and Shining Force EXA on the PS2. While I'm in this video, go check out Tenchi Muyo. Mihoshi is awesome.